Fanny Adams, an 8-year-old girl, was out walking with her younger sister Lizzie and their friend Minnie Warner. The 3 children walked along the dirt path near their home. Fanny was the oldest in her family, living with her parents, George and Harriet Adams, in a small brick cottage near Tanhouse Lane. That day, the 3 girls decided to go out to fetch water from a nearby brook and hoped to see the hop pickers at work under the sun. Fanny, Lizzie and Minnie walked along the dirt path, passing by the blacksmith's shop where they waved at the smith working, and then they continued toward the open fields. As they walked, a man appeared from the direction of High Street. He was Frederick Baker, a 29-year-old clerk to a solicitor named Clemens. He was a well-known man in the town, always dressed neatly in a waistcoat and high collar, often carrying papers in a leather folder. While he was familiar to the girls, today his appearance would be the beginning of a tragedy that no one could have imagined. Baker smiled, took a coin from his pocket, and offered it to the girls. "Hello, girls. I have a little money here. Would you like to take it?" Fanny took the coin and smiled brightly. "Thank you, but we just want to play." Baker continued, smiling gently, and then said, "Well then, would you help me for just a short while? I have a little treat for you, if you come with me for a bit. I need someone to help me carry a parcel. I'll buy you some sweets." Fanny looked at Lizzie and Minnie, hesitated for a moment, but then nodded and decided to follow him. Before leaving, she turned back and waved at Lizzie and Minnie. Fanny, gently waving her hand, "Wait for me, I'll be back soon." And then, that was the last time they saw Fanny alive. The strange man led her through a narrow path between the hop fields and the hedge, and no one knew that within minutes everything would change forever. Lizzie and Minnie stayed behind, counting the coins they had just received. They continued chatting while waiting for Fanny to return. Time passed, and when they looked up again, they realized that Fanny and the man had disappeared from sight. Both girls became worried, but they thought Fanny had only gone a little way and would come back soon, but no. As time passed and Fanny still did not return, their concern began to grow, and the 2 decided to head back home. When Lizzie and Minnie got home, they told their mother what had happened. Harriet Adams, hearing that Fanny had gone with the man from the solicitor's office, felt a wave of anxiety rising in her chest. Without hesitation, she immediately left the house to begin searching for Fanny. Lizzie shakily, worried, "Mom, Fanny went with the man from the office. He gave us a penny, then asked Fanny to help him carry a parcel." Harriet Adams, shocked, anxious, "It can't be. You stay here, I'll go find her right away." Immediately, a search was organized. Harriet Adams called on the help of townspeople, but as night fell, the search still yielded no results. The whole town grew more anxious, but no one knew that the real tragedy had already begun the moment Fanny went with that man. Fanny Adams, an innocent little girl, would never return. Her death happened in a cruel and merciless way, and the man responsible was soon to be revealed: Frederick Baker, the man who had been familiar to all the children. Someone they had trusted was the one who had taken Fanny's life. After Fanny's body was discovered and the evidence began to surface, the investigation grew more intense than ever. Frederick Baker was taken in for questioning, and all attention was now focused on him. While he remained calm and indifferent, the growing evidence seemed to paint a clear picture against him, making the townspeople even more certain that he was the one responsible. The further discoveries added to the mounting suspicion surrounding Baker. The entry in his diary, "Killed a young girl. It was fine and hot," was a key piece of evidence. It was a simple, chilling statement that left no room for doubt. It was a confession of murder. This line, written so plainly, signaled a deliberate act, and it was impossible to ignore. The detectives knew this was the turning point in the case, and they could now direct their full focus on Baker. The police continued their search for additional clues in the surrounding area. A small knife, partially lodged in the ground near the riverbank, was discovered, though it seemed insignificant at first. A closer examination revealed that it could very well be the weapon used in Fanny's murder. The knife had a narrow blade, and its design suggested that it could have been used to inflict the fatal wounds on the young girl. But the investigation was still far from clear, and it left the detectives with more questions than answers. As the search expanded, additional items were found: small scraps of fabric, a ribbon, and other personal effects that belonged to Fanny. These pieces of evidence were wrapped up and added to the case file. No valuable items had been stolen, which ruled out the possibility of robbery as the motive. The lack of stolen goods only deepened the suspicion that this was a calculated murder, not an accident or a random crime. As the investigation unfolded, the police began to question Baker's alibi. Despite his calm demeanor, there was something unsettling about his responses. He did not show any signs of guilt or remorse. He was methodical in his answers, and his indifference only heightened the suspicion that he was hiding something. He did not appear nervous, nor did he seem worried that he was the prime suspect in the disappearance of Fanny. Baker was taken to the Alton police station, where he was kept under guard. He requested to write letters to his family, which was granted, and in the meantime, the investigation continued. Despite the evidence stacking against him, Baker remained eerily composed. He spent his days reading and writing, with no visible signs of distress. The police questioned him repeatedly, but he consistently denied any involvement in the crime, stating that he had merely spoken to Fanny and led her away to help him carry a parcel. By now, the investigation had begun to take a more methodical shape. Witnesses had been questioned, and more details of Baker's behavior were brought to light. His diary entries, the small knife found at the scene, and the testimony of the children who last saw him with Fanny all pointed to him as the likely murderer. But there was still the question of what had truly happened during the time Fanny was alone with Baker. Had he planned this murder in advance, or did it occur in a moment of passion? These questions were yet to be answered. Meanwhile, the search for further evidence continued. As the days passed, detectives expanded their search area, examining the nearby hopfields, riverbanks, and surrounding meadows. Every inch of land was covered, but it wasn't until a small piece of fabric was found near the lane that the investigation took a turn. The piece of cloth was folded neatly, as though it had been placed there deliberately and forgotten. This discovery raised more questions, but it also reinforced the theory that Fanny had been attacked in the field and dragged away to where her body was later found. The police worked tirelessly to piece together the events of that fateful afternoon. They began to examine Baker's behavior in the days after Fanny's disappearance. When they questioned him about the time he had spent with Fanny, he remained calm and untroubled. His responses were calculated, giving nothing away. He maintained that he had done nothing wrong and had simply taken a walk with Fanny to buy her some sweets. But the more they dug, the more inconsistencies began to emerge. The lack of emotion from Baker, the damning diary entry, the physical evidence, and the testimonies from the children and the townspeople all pointed toward one thing. Baker was involved in Fanny's death, yet he refused to confess. The detectives were certain that they had the right man, But the question remained, why did Baker commit such a heinous crime? Was it premeditated, or had something else triggered it? The town of Alton, meanwhile, was growing restless. As the investigation continued, the townspeople were left in a state of uncertainty. Parents kept their children close, afraid to let them wander near the meadow. The local church saw an overflow of parishioners, standing at the back, heads lowered in quiet contemplation. The brewing tension in the town was palpable. The idea that a seemingly ordinary man could commit such a horrible crime was too much to bear. Finally, after days of investigation, the police were ready to make their move. They had gathered enough evidence to bring Baker to trial. The case was building toward a climax, and the entire town was watching, waiting for justice to be served. Baker's fate seemed sealed, but the full truth of what happened that day remained elusive. The investigation had unraveled many pieces of the puzzle, but the final revelation was still to come. The town of Alton remained in a state of grim silence. The shock of Fanny Adams' brutal death still loomed over the town, and the tension within the community only grew stronger. Everyone now waited for the trial to begin, where the truth would finally come to light and one of the darkest secrets of the town would be exposed. On August 27, 1867, the first official inquest into the death of Fanny Adams was held at the Lion Hotel in Alton. This was a significant day, the moment when justice would begin its pursuit, and all the townsfolk gathered, from officials and police to ordinary townspeople. All of them had one question: was Frederick Baker the murderer, and would justice prevail? The inquest began in the suffocating heat of late summer, with the air thick in the small courtroom. The windows were shut to keep the oppressive heat outside, and everyone sat in tense silence. Robert Harfield, the coroner overseeing the inquest, began by calling up witnesses. The evidence, witness testimonies, and details surrounding the crime would soon be revealed to all. The sound of papers shuffling echoed in the room, and first to be called was Dr. Lois Leslie, the local surgeon who had conducted the post-mortem examination on Fanny's body. Dr. Leslie explained the details of the examination and described the wounds found on the young girl's body. According to Dr. Leslie, Fanny's death was not accidental, it was a deliberate act of murder. The wounds on her body were consistent with being inflicted by a sharp instrument, and there was no evidence of robbery or struggle. Dr. Leslie's report confirmed that Fanny had died during the early afternoon of August 24th, and that the cause of death was clear: a violent, premeditated act. In my opinion, the death was immediate, consistent with a sharp instrument, he concluded, his tone grim. The quiet in the room was palpable as he sat down, and everyone present absorbed the impact of his words. Next, the child witness, Minnie Warner, was called to testify. Minnie, Fanny's close friend, was only 8 years old, but her testimony would be crucial in the investigation. She was sworn in, with her mother by her side, and began recounting what she had seen that afternoon. Minnie nervously explained, "We were playing near the meadow when the man came. He was kind to us and gave us a penny. Then he asked Fanny to walk with him for a short way. He said he'd buy her some sweets. Fanny was a little unsure, but she went with him, waving back at us. That was the last time I saw her." Minnie's small hands gripped the chair tightly as she spoke. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Every word she spoke was like a dagger in the heart of the courtroom. Her testimony matched the timeline, and the room was thick with the weight of her words. Behind Minnie, her mother stood, offering support. Mrs. Gardner, a neighbor. confirmed that Lizzie had told her the same story later that afternoon, saying Fanny had gone off with the man from the office. Mrs. Gardner had immediately gone to inform Mrs. Adams, George Adams. Fanny's father also gave his evidence, explaining how he and the townspeople had searched the fields, looking for any sign of Fanny. He identified the personal effects found at the scene belonging to Fanny, further cementing the tragic truth. As the testimony continued, the last witness called to the stand was Frederick Baker himself. He was calm, collected, and showed no signs of fear or guilt. When asked about what had happened that day, he remained consistent with his earlier account, that he had met Fanny, given her some money, and asked her to help him carry a parcel. He reiterated that he had only taken a short walk with her before leaving her at the meadow. His story, however, was inconsistent with the evidence that had been presented. There was something unsettling about Baker's demeanor. His nonchalance, his refusal to show any remorse, made the entire room uneasy. It seemed as if he was detached from the severity of the situation, as if the death of a child meant nothing to him. He never showed a flicker of emotion, and his story felt rehearsed, too calculated to be true. The cold indifference only deepened the suspicion against him. Despite the evidence mounting against him, his diary entry, the witness testimonies, and the items found near the scene, Baker continued to deny any wrongdoing. He claimed that he had done nothing more than take a walk with the girl. Yet the facts told a different story. The jury, after hearing all the evidence and deliberating, reached a verdict. Frederick Baker was guilty of willful murder. The coroner thanked them for their service, and Baker was committed for trial in the next session at Winchester. Outside the hotel, a low murmur spread among the crowd. Some people removed their hats. Others simply turned away and walked home in silence. The town was now certain of what had happened, but the sense of finality was cold and heavy. After the inquest, Alton buzzed with talk of the trial. News from London arrived quickly, each newspaper with its own account of the tragedy. Headlines like the Alton tragedies spread across the pages, each one repeating the same grim facts, but each telling the story in a slightly different way. The Hampshire Chronicle reported the arrest in measured terms, while the Illustrated Police News published an engraving that attracted a crowd outside the post office. By evening, copies of the paper were being passed around, and in the inns, people were already discussing the trial that was to come. The town was full of gossip. Some swore they had seen Baker near the meadow before, while others claimed they had seen him the following morning in church, as calm as ever. One brewer even claimed he had once lent Baker a knife, which had never been returned. However, none of these claims were proven to be true. False leads began to surface. One traveller in Winchester claimed to have met a second man carrying blood-stained clothes, but the description didn't match anyone in Alton, and the story was quickly discarded. Another report suggested that gypsies might have been responsible for the crime, but they had left the district days earlier. The police dismissed these as irrelevant, stating that there was no evidence to support these claims. Baker's demeanor remained unchanged. He continued to receive letters, some condemning him, others pleading for mercy. He read them all slowly, placing them in a neat pile before asking the jailer for more paper. His employer, Mr. Clemens, was interviewed but could add little more than Baker's punctual habits and his methodical work ethic. It became clear to the police that Baker's life had been carefully structured, with no room for impulse or passion. This made his crime even more chilling. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the case seemed to be dragging on. The town grew uneasy, but life had to continue. mothers held their children close when passing by the meadow gate. Sundays saw the church filled with parishioners, standing at the back, heads lowered, reflecting the heavy burden of the tragedy. In the evenings, men gathered near the brewery, speaking in hushed tones about the trial to come. The town, though, had begun to settle back into its rhythm, despite the dark shadow that loomed over them. Yet with each passing day, there was a quiet wish that the case would be resolved, that the name of the child would be allowed to rest. In the days following Fanny Adams' brutal murder, the town of Alton was left in shock, grappling with the horror of the crime. Frederick Baker, the man seen with Fanny before her disappearance, was arrested and questioned. Despite his calm demeanor, the evidence against him mounted. His diary entry, "Killed a young girl." It was fine and hot, was a chilling confession confirming his role in the crime, along with witness testimonies and physical evidence. The case against him grew stronger after Baker's arrest. The search continued in the surrounding areas, with small items belonging to Fanny being discovered near the scene. These findings, including a knife and personal effects, further cemented Baker's involvement in the murder. As the investigation progressed, the townspeople grew more certain that Baker was the perpetrator, though he continued to deny any wrongdoing when the inquest was held. Minnie Warner, Fanny's close friend, testified about the events leading up to Fanny's disappearance, confirming that Baker had been the last person seen with her. The jury returned a verdict of guilty, and Baker was committed for trial. The town of Alton, while relieved by the verdict, remained haunted by the loss of a young, innocent life. The trial concluded with Baker's conviction of willful murder, and he was sentenced to death. On December 24, 1867, Frederick Baker was executed. However, for Fanny's family, the conviction did little to ease their grief. The loss of their daughter left an indelible scar, and the town, too, was forever changed. Fanny's death left a shadow over Alton, and her name would live on in tragedy and as a symbol of the darkness that can lie hidden in the most ordinary of places. In the years that followed, Fanny's case became a notorious part of Alton's history. The phrase "Sweet Fanny Adams" began to circulate as a dark idiom, originating from the gruesome tragedy. Over time, the meaning of the phrase became detached from its horrific origins, though the town of Alton never fully escaped the haunting memory of Fanny's death, despite the passage of time. The legacy of Fanny Adams' death continued to affect the town. Her grave in St. Lawrence churchyard was quietly tended, a somber reminder of a life tragically cut short. The case left a lasting impact on the town, sparking discussions about child welfare, justice, and the need for reform in the legal system. It became clear that Fanny's death, while ultimately leading to justice, also revealed the flaws and limitations of the justice system of the time. Even years later, Fanny Adams' story continued to be spoken of in hushed tones, a cautionary tale for future generations. The town of Alton, forever marked by the tragedy, could never fully move on from the loss of the young girl whose life was stolen too soon. This tragic and chilling story has moved you. We encourage you to reflect on the lessons it holds about justice, the darkness that can lurk in unexpected places, and the importance of protecting the vulnerable. Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Let's continue this important conversation about the legacy of Fanny Adams and the lessons we can learn from her case. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more historical, true crime stories, investigations, and in-depth narratives that shed light on the mysteries and tragedies of the past. Hit the bell icon to stay updated and explore more stories like this one. Thank you for joining us in remembering Fanny Adams. Let's ensure that her story never fades from memory.